Good evening, everybody. I'm Reverend Dave Ledford. I'm the pastor here at the Absecon United Methodist Church. We warmly welcome all of you here for a really important conversation and a really great night with really great people. And it's one of our common missions across community services and religious organizations is to make this world a better place for all people, right? And so that's what we're talking about tonight, is how do we make the world a better place for groups of people who haven't necessarily been given all the fairness that they are due. And so we're here to talk about that. We're here to talk about things going well, things to be improved. And first thing that we want to do is have a moment of silence, of meditation, whatever that moment means to you, to remember the people, the advocates for accessibility who have passed away in the last year, even people who were a part of the community that were impacted by accessibility issues who have passed in the year. Let's just begin our time with a centering moment of silence and meditation. Thank you all for coming. And our host for our third annual Accessibility Night is Jacob Hackett. He's sitting right here. And he will be officially introduced by Lynn Caterson. Yeah. There you are. You were, I didn't know I was. Oh, surprise.
Surprise. Not knowing I wore my Methodist shirt, and it's come in handy because everyone that needs to use the restroom knows they can ask me, and I can point there, and it works very well. As Rev Dave said, we're thrilled to have you here, and I know we've got some dear friends and family members of Joe Brown, and that's one of the people that Rev Dave was talking about. Joe Brown has been on the county Accessibility Committee working with the Board of Elections, which is a big job as we try to make all our polling places handicap accessible. And so I worked with him in that capacity for many, 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 many years. And we used to visit polls together, and he used to tell me, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. And I'd say, I'm working on it, I'm working on it, I'm working on it. So one of the people I hope you all gave thanks for in the moment of silence was Joe Brown. He made a huge, huge difference in this county. As our host tonight, Jacob Hackett was, oh yes. He can be ornery, and I say that with lots of love, but he's also very, very determined. And he has put together these workshops to tell us all what we need to do in accessibility. I was in a wheelchair for a while, and I had no idea where I couldn't get to. It's an amazing kind of thing, and I know we'll all learn a lot. Jacob is on our church council and always has something to say, and we're just so glad you're here in our Methodist Church. And Jacob, we are very, very thankful for you. Who gets this now, Jacob?
Jim. Got a mic on. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third annual Conference on Accessibility. I would like to introduce tonight's panel. Starting to my right, please welcome Next, please welcome the voice of the South, James Sam Buonadano. Lastly, he was one of Joe Brown's best friends for over 50 years. He never met a microphone he didn't like. Please welcome Dr. John Glass. Next slide. Next. I would like to introduce John Glassy to memorialize Joe Brown. John?
Oh, because tonight's gathering is about accessibility, there's no better example to talk about than Joe Brown, who left us this past August. Chuck Dine, who is here tonight, Barry Hackett, who is here tonight, and Joe Brown and I and a couple of other knuckleheads, we started this whole pursuit of trying to do things for the disabled population in 1971. We were the guys that brought Special Olympics to New Jersey. Joe Brown was a part of that. We were the guys who in 1976 went to the city of Atlantic City and to the county of Atlantic and said, this is supposed to be a hospitality industry. Can you be hospitable to people in wheelchairs, people with crutches, people with canes, people who are autistic, although autism really wasn't much of a thing in the early 70s. And we were on the first disabled advisory board. I was the first chairman, and when Joe died, he was the chairman. Went through that whole cycle. He had still been serving on that board since 1975. Joe and Barry and Chuck and Larry McCarty, all local guys, made a major impact in making sports and social activities available to the handicapped. So if you're sitting there tonight thinking, well, what can I do about accessibility? I mean, if knuckleheads like us can do stuff, anybody can do it. Trust me, anybody can do it. Barry and I always joke, if we had taken all these things that we had done and turned them into money, we'd all be rich. But instead, he's still out begging for money for the Field of Dreams every week. Joe went to Washington with us, with a whole different group, the Disabled Board. And the reason that you have curb cuts outside here, and the reason that you have handicapped accessibility of federal law now throughout the entire United States is because of the work we did in Washington. We were on subcommittees to help write that law, which all started with an architect in Atlantic City, Tommy Sykes. He helped us, told us how to write things, what words had to be used in the laws, and that handicapped accessibility law, plus other people all over the country, ended up putting together that law. So we all made an impact. Joe never stopped. Joe was on the Maloney's Bike-a-thon as an emergency guy. I mean, and the Maloney's Bike-a-thon was a story unto itself. And just because everybody drank didn't make it a bad thing. We raised over a couple of years, we raised well over $1 million with that bike ride. Joe was on the very first Donnie Fund. This is the logo I have on tonight. The Donnie Fund provides help for South Jersey families that have a challenged situation. That charity, all volunteer, which Joe was on the original member, was there to his dying day. We've given away over $1 million to local families, and not one person that works on that program gets a dime. Nobody asks for money when they go to conferences or travel or anything. All 100% go to them. When Barry and Susan Hacken came up with the idea for the Field of Dreams, which is right down the road from here, which I told them they were crazy, because I said, that's going to cost us a fortune. That field now is worth over $1 million, all volunteers, not one person gets paid, nobody looks for expenses. Although I'm not too sure with Barry sometimes. He tells me he's got a Bahama fund, so I'm a little nervous about that. But Joe Brown was on that program from day one, and Joe Brown was the one who put out the calendar every year. He took all the photographs for that and distributed it. We printed 500 calendars this year, 500 calendars this year that we sent out to the community at large. And Joe is on the cover, unfortunately, this year because he passed away. So while we're talking about accessibility tonight, everybody can make an impact. Like, we are a living embodiment, and Joe was the boy who put it all through. He was the one who got the law changed in America that wheelchair lifts can go underneath beds in hotel rooms so that they could go into hotel rooms. That came from Joe Brown, living in Galloway Township at the end. He was originally a Pleasantville boy. There's a few of us from Pleasantville here tonight. There, some of us from Pleasantville High School. It's almost like a class reunion. There's about 7 Pleasantville High School people here, 8. So Joe Brown is the living example. So if you ever think, I can't do anything about it, yeah, you can. He worked with Lynn Caterson to get things done here in Atlantic County. We made the changes, and now that torch has somewhat been passed to Jacob Hackett. Jacob Hackett is now the guy who's carrying that torch. Unfortunately, Jacob thinks it's a microphone so he can talk. He's never met a microphone he didn't like, I'm telling you. But that's the kind of guy, when Joe came back from Germany after he had broken his neck, he was in the United States Air Force in Germany, he came back, he had no idea what he was going to do or where he was going to go. And after a lot of talks, a lot of long talks, he decided he was going to help people. Now, here was a guy who was an auto mechanic before he went in the Air Force. And when he came back from there, he was paralyzed from the neck down. And he overcame that. And instead of thinking, what am I going to do with my life? He said, I'm going to help people. He said other veterans taught him that you had to help other people. So Joe is the example that we all should follow. And I can't say this without mentioning his wife, Marcia. There was a girl that stuck by his side day in, day out throughout their entire lives together. And when Marcia was in high school, she was one hot girl. I'm telling you, she was a gorgeous girl. And when Joe came back, I assumed that a lot of my friends thought, well, she's not going to stay around. This girl can have pretty much any guy she wants. Marcia never left him. Marcia stayed right with him. I talked to her last night because I was hoping she was going to be able to come tonight, but she has her own little issues right now and all. But there was dedication. There was a girl that was totally dedicated and the true meaning of the word love. So if you're thinking about it tonight, that's why Jacob has this seminar every year, and he's trying to keep people in mind that we can all do something about accessibility. We can all do something about handicap, not just accessible, but usable by. There are things that are accessible and not usable by handicapped people. Whenever it's possible, whenever you can do something, think about Joe Brown, and you'll find you got a lot inside.
Thank you, John. Joe was a living example. He never let anything get in his way. A little later on, I am going to share my thoughts on what Joe mentioned.
In memory of our good friend Joe Brown. Joe lost use of his legs in a car accident while serving in the Air Force in Germany in 1967. He spent a year and a half in the hospital. He saw how other veterans coped with their situations and the importance of volunteers. He lived his life with a spirit of... Joe spearheaded the creation of the county's first accessible beach guide. He was proud of his accomplishment to create a national change in hotel access. After many years of work, he was successful with the U.S. Access Board and the International Code Council. All states slowly adopted his bed law, which is now a code mandating open bed frames in accessible hotel rooms. This allows the passage of a Hoyer lift that makes transfer from a wheelchair to bed possible.
Hi, my name is Joanne Garr. I have worked with Joe Brown for over 15 years. I was part of the Disability Advisory Board with him. I think he was the strongest, most knowledgeable, kindest advocate that I've ever known in all my career. He just had a way of getting things done. He implemented many things while we were on the board, and I wanted to just go through a few of them. One of his major things was to work with the Board of Elections and go around and make sure all the polling places were fully accessible to people. That was a big part of what we did as a board, but Joe was our leader for that. The other piece that he was very involved in is accessibility to the beaches. He would go around and he would teach us how to all go around and look at each beach in Atlantic County and see what was accessible and what was not. And we then did a brochure which explained all the accessible beaches in Atlantic County. So those were two things. There was another issue that he was so proud of, and it was actually a little bit before I got to the board. He was concerned that when people in wheelchairs went to hotels and needed a Hoyer lift, they couldn't get transferred from the wheelchair to the bed. He worked tirelessly for years, writing letters, contacting people. He never gave up until he was able to get the code changed so that now accessible rooms in hotels need to be able to provide an open frame bed so people can transfer or use their Hoyer lift and have a comfortable way to transfer. So I think he was really proud of that, and we've all heard how hard he worked for that. I think with all his tireless efforts and ability to just make people comfortable, he really was able to make a difference. He shared his expertise, he shared his experiences, and I know we on the board are all going to miss him, and I'm personally going to miss him as a friend.
That is just a little testimony of who Joe was. Whatever you asked him, he said no. John will tell you, he just wanted to be there for people. I think I can speak for a lot of us that we can all try to be the way Joe was, and don't be afraid to ask for. As Joe got older, he was never afraid to send me an email. He would send me stuff. Does this look okay? I remember one of the last things he sent me before he died was Risley Square in Galloway going up. So he said, do we need a curb cut so wheelchairs could get by? I said, absolutely. I said, that's dangerous if somebody tips off. I mean, he was open for anything. That's next slide. One of Joe's former neighbors in Beacon, I see Jeff Whitaker. His sister Lisa is a member of the church, and she could not be here tonight. So she asked me if she could provide her thoughts. So I interviewed her.
2, 1. Lisa, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Whitaker, and I was Joe Brown's neighbor from the time I was about 10 years old. Joe and Marcia moved in across the street from me. Funny thing, when they started to move in, they actually moved into our kickball field, which all of the kids in the neighborhood were quite upset when the house started being built on the kickball field. But it only took a very short time for us to meet Joe and Marcia to be actually very, very grateful. We were willing to give up our kickball field so that they could be welcomed into the neighborhood. And I just wanted to take a moment just to really honor and remember Joe and his legacy, his life. He impacted me so much as a child. When I was in junior high, I actually won a skateboard at my 8th grade, I think it was magazine sales. And Joe and Marcia's driveway had just a very little bit of an incline. And so they allowed me to come over and skateboard up and down their driveway. And so many times when I did that, Joe would come out and he'd sit there and cheer me on and yell to me, and we would talk. And I had such a great relationship with them. And they always, not just me, but the whole neighborhood was always welcome to run through their sprinklers or come play on their driveway. They really embraced the neighborhood children. The other thing that I really appreciated is Joe and Marcia always asked me for my athletic schedule. I played field hockey and basketball and softball, and I can't tell you the number of times I would be on the softball field or the field hockey field, and I would see their van pull up, and I would know that Joe and Marcia were there to cheer me on and to be present for my sports. And that meant so much to me. They did that all through high school, and it really was made an impact on me. As I got older, I still every time I traveled, I would come home and I would go over and visit Joe and Marcia, and we would go out to lunch, and my mom would join us. It was a very special time. And I do remember the time they came to me and said, "We just want you to know that we're moving out to Smithville." And I just looked at them and I said, "You can't do that. You've always been my neighbors. You can't leave." And they kind of laughed and they said, "We'll always be your neighbors, but we are moving." And so then that's kind of sparked even more of a time for us to go out and meet for lunches. The other thing I really remember about Joe is Halloween. Joe always sat out on his little porch and he would count the number of trick-or-treaters that came by on Blenheim Avenue. And he had his yellow pad and he would mark it down. And so at the end of Halloween night on November 1st, we'd all ask him, "So Joe, how many trick-or-treaters came to Blenheim?" And he'd have the running list. And so he was always such a neighborhood participant. He loved the children in our neighborhood, as does Marcia. And that both Joe and Marcia have such a special place in my heart. And I am so, so grateful to God that he put Joe and Marcia across the street from me. And I had the privilege and the honor of growing up with them as part of my story and part of my childhood. So I just want to honor Joe Brown, his life, his legacy. I want Marcia, which she already knows, but she knows how much I love her and how much I love Joe. And I'm grateful to God for both of them. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Lisa, very much for your memories tonight.
Okay, speaking about AI, please welcome my mom and Kathleen Barron.
So I wanted to talk about accessibility, just in terms of it's really for everybody. It's to make life easier for everybody, all of you in here as well. And I think initially when you hear the word accessibility, you automatically think of disabled individuals. You automatically think of people who need help. But if you think about your own lives and how you have been positively impacted by things that are now considered the norm, it helps to realize that accessibility isn't just for individuals with difficulties, it's for all of us. John talked about sidewalk cuts and ramps. Yes, they may have been created for someone in a wheelchair, but how about the mom with the stroller? Or how about the service guy delivering boxes to the store and he's coming from the street with a truck? Automatic doors. How many times do you leave a store and your arms are full and there's a door that's going to automatically open? You're benefiting from that just as much as someone in a chair or someone who is blind or deaf or whatever it may be. Excuse me. Elevators. Nobody wants to climb 8 flights of steps if there's an elevator. It doesn't matter if you're sitting or you're walking. So we all benefit from that. Lever door handles. A lot of new homes have these. You can open a lever door handle with your elbow, with your arm. Somebody who has arthritis bad in their hand and they can't manipulate a round doorknob. So a lever helps all of us, not just someone who is physically disabled. Audiobooks. Anybody who travels. Do you listen to podcasts on the radio or audiobooks? You might, it's not just for someone who can't see. It's for all of our enjoyment. Voice to text. How many times do you talk into your cell phone to leave a message, to give a message? It's not just for, I mean, Jacob uses voice to text for everything. It obviously works wonders in his life, but how many times do we do it? Closed captioning and subtitles, initially designed for people who are hearing impaired. My daughter, nothing wrong with her hearing, she loves it on a television. I find it very distracting, but she loves it. If you're out to dinner or you're at a sports bar and there's a big game going on, how many times are there subtitles going across the bottom so you can follow the game? Working remotely. COVID was horrible. We all know it. But out of COVID came working remotely. Transportation isn't an issue anymore for individuals who maybe can't just hop in their car and go. It has opened up a whole world for people who have mobility issues. Online shopping. Y'all use Amazon, I know you do. How easy is that? You don't have to run out. It shows up at your house. He doesn't have to worry about catching an Uber or an Access Link or whatever it may be to go get a package. It just comes to his home. Navigation, GPS. We all use it, especially if you have a newer car. You can't help but use it. It's there. My in-laws use Alexa. We all use, I mean, we don't have it, but like Alexa, how does it help? You can turn all the lights on in your house at one time. You can turn on your security alarm. You can adjust your oven to come on at a certain time. It's not just for people with disabilities. And that's one thing I wanted to stress, like accessibility for all of us is extremely important. And it's to the point now with modern technology how you become dependent on it. We need that for people who have challenges. We need technology to keep moving forward. We need the new creation to make everything just a little bit easier. The definition of accessibility is the quality of being easy to approach, reach, enter, speak with, use, or understand. If you think about that, that's every aspect of your life. It's everything you do every day. Kathleen and I work together for artificial intelligence and how that is up and coming and evolving to help individuals with disabilities, to help those who have mobility issues, are blind, are deaf, or whatever other challenges they may face. We have a video I don't even know if it's in order, sorry, Rev.
Right, I think it's going to come after the first couple slides.
Okay. I just,
It's the mechanical arm.
well, this is interesting. I can talk about that real quick.
This is
About subways.
Subway experience. Subway experience.
Any way for someone who have mobility issues to get on the subway. And there's no funding for it either. Carefully. I don't know. I can't imagine.
So we need to go back up to the first one, or we can kind of skip through those to number 3. Do you want me to just do that, and then I'll give it back to you? So when we first started planning for this year's forum, we decided that we wanted to take a look back 3 years and see what's changed since we first started talking about, we had our first forum, and what positive changes have happened since then. So one of the issues that we talked about at length the first year was if you're planning to go out somewhere, either to dinner or anywhere really for entertainment, what are you going to face when you get there? Will there be accessible entrances? Will there be accessible tables? Will there be a place for you an accessible bathroom? So we were talking about it and saying that somebody should invent that, and then Google must have been listening in on our conversation. And so they now have in Google Maps, if you put in a place, it will tell you, you can set it in your settings, and it will tell you whether the restaurant you're visiting has accessible entrances, and you can even go a little bit more in depth. And this is just a really short video to show how that works.
When you're looking to visit a new store, restaurant, or place and you have accessibility needs, it may be challenging to figure out whether you'll be able to easily get into the place or not. Luckily, Google Maps has a new feature that can help. I'm Jessica from techboomers.com, and in this video, I'll be showing you how to find wheelchair accessible places on Google Maps. Now let's get started.
How that works.
To begin, open your Google Maps app. Then tap your profile icon in the top right corner.
It may be challenging
Now
to figure
select
out whether you'll
Settings.
be able to easily get into the place or not.
Scroll down and tap Accessibility. Now tap the switch beside Accessible Places to enable this feature. Once that's done, when you search for a place, you should see a wheelchair icon in the result for any place that is wheelchair accessible. If you click on one of these places, you'll see more details about its specific accessibility attributes, like accessible parking, entrances, seating, and more. That's all it takes to find accessible places on Google Maps. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, we'd love it if you'd hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe to our channel. We put out great new
I wanted to just, this reminded me, Jacob and I were on Access Link, and we were dropping some people off at Ruth Chris. This was not even a year ago. The bus driver had to open the door for them to get in because there was no automatic door, power button, nothing. And this is Ruth Chris in Atlantic City.
They could afford one. But it is nice to see that there's access to information that would make it easier to decide to not pick Ruth Chris as a place you want to go, or to call them and ask them, look, I went on Google Maps and it says you're not providing accessibility. And I think the idea that it's more mainstream through Google is going to make restaurants feel the pressure, if they haven't already made these changes, to start making the changes. And it's just funny that we talked about inventing a system that would rate it, and that was only a few years ago. So they'd heard us, they listened in, they invented a whole system, and it made it a lot easier on us, since that we weren't going to be able to do it so easily. But another topic we talked about the very first year was transportation, and especially air travel. And throughout the last few years, you've probably all seen videos and heard stories about wheelchairs that get left behind, and people that get to their destination and their chair was left back in New York, and really sad and scary stories of vacations are ruined. Now this is just a prototype, but it is nice to see that the major airlines are working on a way to bring your wheelchair onto the plane with you to create a space. And this is a prototype that they're just showing now, but the way I'm seeing it, in the next couple years, we're going to be seeing it on all the major airlines. And this is just a really short video too to show how they're making space.
So we're here in the Delta Flight Products booth at Aircraft Interiors Expo 2023, and arguably star of the show is their new, doesn't have a name yet, but PRM seat, we're calling it because we can. This is Air for All, I'm sorry, it's Air for All. So this is a seat that is designed to be able to take a wheelchair where someone would be sitting normally in the seat when needed. So it's super easy, super interesting. They even don't need to try to do it. So you remove the couple cushions, cut in front. They get stored easily underneath, so they're out of the way for the crew. Easily. Then we come back over. There's an easy release on the outside. Sorry, armrest first. There's a locking mechanism on the outside. It releases, and then the arm pulls up. You also will see this, the base pulls up, the arm slides up as well. That's important. As the wheelchair slides in, that lets the tray table sit above the arms of the wheelchair, so that passenger gets the full experience. When the wheelchair comes in, it gets hooked into the back with these two rear hooks. Those tie it in, and then you get the front hooks at the end. That will lock it into place. We do have a wheelchair here. I think that's going to take me too long to move it into place, and I haven't been trained on the extra bits. But you got to admit, this is pretty easy, pretty cool, and it doesn't take up any extra space. That's the best part.
So that was another issue that we were talking about and talked about it before, and it's really cool to see that a major airline like Delta is putting the money and the time into actually creating prototypes that are going to make this possible. And I guess there are so many, the subway is a shocking statistic to see that 69% don't have it, but when you see progress being made, it's nice to celebrate it because some people are out there doing their job. And I was so moved and touched to hear the whole Joe Brown story. I had heard his stories before, but sitting here, I'm thinking that he started this move, or he was in this movement, and then here we are to just keep going and moving forward with it and see the changes that are coming. Now, the next video that we have, this is a really cool, probably connected through AI, but Heidi was lucky to get to see it in action at school, at Special Services, because, well, let her tell the story, but it's very cool. It's just a very cool video that's very, very touching.
So this young man, he's like in 6th or 7th grade, I don't know, and he has a progressive neurological disease. He can no longer feed himself, and it got to the point where he was embarrassed to have anybody else feed him, so he stopped eating. The physical therapist and his classroom teacher worked really hard to get this robotic arm, and this feeds him, and he accepts it willingly.
It's amazing. Troy, stay nice so I can fall on you.
You can activate it by hitting one of the two switches on the blue tray.
Daniel?
This is just the teacher preparing it.
You want chocolate milk?
But they're the two switches.
Yes?
That, if he hits the one, it rotates the bowl.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Miss Judy. Troy, come on down.
And he's okay with that. He doesn't mind that at all.
The only issue is we have to make sure everything's in little pieces because otherwise we could choke.
That was the teacher talking. But that's giving him so cool. That's giving him independence.
I love that video. Now, I found a little bit, and we don't have to watch the whole video, but I wanted to talk about this young man, and he actually created a company. I guess part of what Heidi said and what I think too is that some things are complicated in a mechanical arm, and everything has to be prototyped and developed. And then there are other solutions and answers that are much simpler. And this young man started a company because he basically spent his whole life solving problems that he faced. So when he got to, by the time he got probably out of high school, he realized that he had what it took to become an engineer, and he started his own company where he can create solutions for very specific problems. And I think the combination between high tech and low tech and community involvement will provide the solutions that fit everybody. But in the second slide after this one, the number 11, I like what he said, because he said accessibility doesn't always begin on drawing board or in SolidWorks. In fact, most of the time it begins in or with an inclusive mindset. And I think that's so true. An inclusive mindset is what we're going for here. But I'm not sure how we are on time, but there's a short video, and I could it's like 3 minutes. So I'm not sure if we could include it here, or you could always check it. And oh, I got the thumbs up from the timekeeper, so we can see a little bit about this young man. That's the name of his company, Rap Adapt.
Living is very clever. Lots of problems and obstacles. And the occasional mess. In order to overcome some of these obstacles, I have been needing assistance knowledge from a very early age. I've used everything from herb sticks for mixing tea batters to custom sets to praise snow. Assistive technologies have always been a big part of my life, but we have always struggled to find the appropriate solution for me. Throughout high school, I began to create a lot of my own technology, and I began to truly understand the value in being able to create custom solutions and also solving buffers engineering, which led to my acceptance into RIT, where I studied mechanical engineering technology. I am now the president of Rapid Corporation, where my team and I develop custom technology. Our general process involves meeting with the customer and assessing their goals and limitations. Once we do this, we then begin prototyping a custom solution for that individual. Prototyping involves CADWorks, 3D printing, CNC machining, and sometimes welding. Although we have access to a lot of advanced technology, sometimes the most effective solution is the most simple one. I believe that with the appropriate perspective, any problem can be referred for creativity.
Isn't that cool? So I had been having a discussion with Jacob about his experience with students from ACIT who are using CAD to develop very personal solutions to problems that students may face in a lot of different ways. I don't know as much about it, so I'm going to hand it over to Jacob to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was just, I was at ACIT the beginning of May, and the teacher said, "Can you come down to the CAD lab?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "The kids are doing ADA models, and we would like you to see what we've done." When I tell you, I went in that lab, I was floored at how much the kids know. They say children are our future, and I mean, the fact that a kid knew, a sophomore in high school, knew where a pool lift was supposed to go for a person in a wheelchair. They knew where to put an elevator in a house. I mean, and they're not living it every day like some of us are. So I asked the kid out of the blue, I said, was there something that got him interested in this stuff? And some of them said, well, I have a family member, I have this. But I was so impressed, and Stockton University is here tonight on behalf of ACIT, that I told the kids, come show us your models as part of your final exam. So, and I've gotten emails from the school. I mean, it's just amazing to see how far kids have come.
So that's very inspiring to think that our young people in high school are working on solutions to these issues too. It takes a community. So Heidi compiled a list of different resources. We talked about having something that you could take with you when you go, government resources, and also just a list of different laws and impactful laws that probably Joe Brown was part of forming and creating. But anyway, it's an honor to be here again. This is my third year at the forum, and I'm very honored that I've been invited back to talk about the accessibility. And so thanks very much, and thanks for everyone for coming.
Whoops. As John said, the South Jersey Field of Dreams began 21 years ago. Sam and I have taken on a lot more responsibility now. How can you get involved? He's going to tell you how you can get involved and maybe come see a game in the fall.
Thank you, Jacob. I was told there was going to be mixed drinks. Getting pretty late. But no, thank you for coming. I'm Sam Bondano. If you can't pronounce that, that's fine. I am a board member now, thanks to Barry and John and Chuck. Hey, Chuck. On the Board of Trustees for the South Jersey Field of Dreams. I'm also the main announcer there. Jacob has decided bring me along and then tell me to speak when I get here. Bear with me.
Well, that's what happens.
It's always a fun surprise, right? But I've been volunteering at the field now for about 4 to 5 years, thanks to John Glassy showing me the way to come up at the field. It's truly become a special part of my life. Not only the people and the great volunteers that I've gotten to meet and really become a very big part of my extended family in my life, if you will. But I remember the first time I went up to the Field of Dreams, it was something that I just never got. I was a homeschooled kid. I was fairly sheltered, so it was, I didn't see much of the world. And then this blew my mind, just getting exposed to something like this and knowing that something like this was out there, not only for people like Jacob or people just all over with disabilities or on this autism spectrum or whatever have you. It truly was a mind-blowing experience to just sit there and just feel how special it was. It actually brought a tear to my eye at a young age, if you could believe it. But getting involved with the Field of Dreams it really has put my life on a different path than it was going on. To get involved with it, you can always just come up and talk to me at the end of this. There's definitely more ways. We always need more volunteers on the field helping out with the kids. They get up to bat, run along with them, have some fun. Just going out there in the field and helping them, just cheer them on, and just, even just showing up to a game can do so much for them when they see them all. And the one thing that gets me is just, because I'm the announcer, when you say their name and they just look up at you and they they make eye contact and they find me. And now I'm in a press box, so I'm like hidden. They come right up to me, they just point right at the sky, and they're like, I see you. And now, something I didn't realize is the impact I've kind of been making. And it really didn't hit me until just this past Friday night for the final game. I was out of the announcing booth. We were a little short-handed that night on volunteers, so of course, let me know if you want to get involved. But I was pitching on the third game. And all of these kids at the end of the game came up to me. It was like at least 12 kids that I kind of knew, never really interacted with. They got their own world. They all came up to me and just kept on hugging me and telling me thank you. And I didn't think for a while. I'm not trying to get out there, but them all coming up to me, just like saying thank you and saying, hey, I'll see you in the fall. Hey, you were throwing pitches great. I was extending the bat a little too far. Then they started telling me about what they were doing wrong. I was like, oh, yeah. But it really does make an impact on people with disabilities, mentally or physically, and it's really something that you really don't see, and eventually, I think you will. So I don't know how much longer you want me to go on for. What do we got? John Classy, everybody, come on.
I want to brag on him a little bit. Sam is one of 5 kids. They were all homeschooled. Unfortunately, Sam's father passed away 10 years ago from cancer. So I sort of stepped in and said, I'll help be your father, which might not be a good thing. Some of you who know me know that's not necessarily good. But Sam and his siblings, 2 sisters, 3 boys, they really hadn't been out in the world. They hadn't really experienced a lot because they were cloistered in a very small house, 1 bathroom, 5 kids, 1 bathroom, 2 girls and a mother. But to watch these kids, his brother Henry also comes to the field, to watch these 5 kids now, what they're developing into, and how they help and relate to other people is absolutely amazing. They're very involved in the Catholic Church in Ocean City, where their brother works. They usually get a collection when they were around. They were always looking for something. But these are the kind of kids, without a father, have really done something. And every time they're with me at some place where they're with adults, the adults come around and say, what great kids they are. What great kids they are. So I know the kids that aren't so great get a lot of attention. The ones on the boardwalk causing problems and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of kids out there, maybe not as good as this, but there are other kids out there like this because we see it at the field. The volunteers that we've gotten there over the years, Barry thinks that we get about 1,000 volunteers a year at the field. Coach Russo can tell you how many kids come to help a lot of the kids, and a lot of high school kids, a lot of high school athletes, a lot of kids from Absegami, Holy Spirit, St. Joe's, Hamilton. They come down to the field and volunteer. Stockton, too. Yeah, Stockton comes. So we get a lot of great kids come to the field, and that's one of the things that gives us a lot of hope for the future because Barry, Chuck, and I are real old now. we're real old. And so we're thankful that guys like Jacob on the board. Now Sam has come on the board. Once he turned 21, I hooked him, said, you're coming on the board. This is the hope of the future right there.
Am I? Okay. John is right. I was, putting an organization together like the Field. It's a team effort, and this past Wednesday, Sam and I went to a luncheon, and it still amazes me. 21 years later, the Field of Dreams. What's that? And it's like once they get involved, they don't stop coming back. I still have friends that I graduated with in high school 7, 8 years ago, still come back because that's how big of an impact the Field has made on them. So please come out, talk to one of us. We're always happy to have you. Okay, speaking of technology, I would like to first take a moment to thank Rev Dave and the entire committee for all their work over the past 10 months in putting this together. Speaking of technology, this next guest was stuck in traffic in New York. He came all the way down from New York. He calls me at 3:30 this afternoon and says, Ken, I can't make it. And with that, I called Barb and said, what do? We work together, and without the team. So ladies and gentlemen, joining us via Zoom, please welcome one of my best friends, Sal the Voice Valentinetti. Says, I can't make it, and with that, I called Barb and said, what do? We work together without the technology. So ladies and gentlemen, joining us via Zoom, please welcome one of my best friends, Sal the Voice Valentinetti.
Hi, everybody. Hold on. Well, hold on. I'm sorry. Let me turn that volume down. So as you can tell right now, there's a couple things going on. Number one, I'm not with you in New Jersey. I'm up here in New York. Number two is that incessant blinking light. About an hour ago, as I'm watching the accessibility forum, my power goes out. I had a whole setup here for Zoom with a microphone and a camera and all that, but obviously, once the power went out, all that stopped working. However, if there's one thing I'm going to try to do for my friend Jacob Hackett, it's make it work, because he's trying to make it work for so many people. I see a lot of familiar faces there tonight. Of course, Heidi and Sam. Sam has been a very friendly face down at the Field of Dreams. If Jacob and Barry Hackett weren't enough of a welcoming wagon, Sam is definitely definitely a contender for the head of that. A couple things I wanted to say. I didn't personally know Joe Brown, but I came to know Joe Brown's efforts through Jacob and through the Hackett family. And I'm honored to be a part of an evening honoring Joe. Second, I'd like to bring the attention to one of the panel members, Mrs. Heidi Hackett. Heidi has showed me that the limitations of someone with disability only go as far as the willingness of their loved ones to assist them. And I've seen Heidi throw Jacob over her shoulder and put him in the car, or move him from the car to his chair. Just do as much as she can to make sure that Jacob is staying involved and that everything that we do is inclusive. However, it's not always going to be that way where Heidi can do that. And so, thirdly, the focus falls on our host of the evening, Jacob Hackett. Jacob, through his advocacy, is going to carry on Joe Brown's legacy in such a remarkable way, because he's going to make sure that although we're always going to need family and friends and loved ones like Heidi, that people with disabilities will be able to be included in everything because of the advocacy that Jacob is doing. He's going to make sure that there are sidewalk cuts for miles, and that all of the different things that we see at the Field of Dreams, all of the different small, seemingly back of mind things that we see laid out at the Field of Dreams become commonplace in society. Jacob has been asked to check buildings out for accessibility, to double check them through a couple of the presentations that were made here tonight. We found that it's important for us to not only embrace but implement accessibility in things like infrastructure, things like buildings, but it's more so important for people who are using that accessibility on a daily basis, who are utilizing it, to make sure that it's not just common sense, but it's useful to people with disabilities, to people who require mobility devices and things like that. Not lastly, but I also wanted to touch on Jacob's ease of communication. And I know everyone's going to say, of course, Jacob has ease of communication. He never shuts his mouth. Besides that, Jacob's ease of communication goes beyond staying in touch with each and every one of us, but his ability to communicate his challenges on a daily basis when it comes to things like public transportation. I've seen firsthand a couple of different scenarios where accessible public transportation I'm sorry, I'm watching this on a delay, and I just all heard you laugh at that Jacob joke. I'll wait a second for some tertiary laughter. I also have witnessed situations firsthand where public transportation has been less than ideal, which is okay. Which is not okay, even when it comes to basic public transportation. But when you're dealing with people with special needs, that extra level of care and consideration is so important. And to see that lacking in this day and age is not just frustrating, but it makes me want to follow Jacob to the ends of the earth. Because here is a guy who is going to dedicate the rest of his life to making others' lives easier, to improving on that, to making sure that situations like the ones that I've witnessed aren't commonplace. One last thing that I want to say is, of course, about Jacob. Jacob's fortitude facing the challenges that he faces on a daily basis and wanting to not only change them for himself, but for others is more than admirable. I went to the United Methodist Church of Absecon this past Sunday, and I listened to Reverend Dave, and I sat with the congregation, and I really do believe that we, as not just as Christians, but as Americans, owe it to people with disabilities to try every day to improve their lives. And Jacob is the embodiment of that try. Jacob is the living embodiment of that effort. So we owe it to him, knowing him personally, to do whatever we can to make sure that these accessibility forums continue year after year. And that with each year, we find that things have improved. Much like Joe Brown fought every day in improving the lives of others until real change was enacted. So must we. We have a duty, not just as Christians, but as Americans. We were all granted freedom, no matter our physical ability. And I just want to say that supporting Jacob in this matter is so, so important. Again, I wish I could be there with you. I calculated that if I stayed in the car, I'd still be in Brooklyn. So the best option for me was to turn around and come home where my power's gone out, but we're still here. I'm still here with you guys. Jacob, I love you. And that's it. That's it for me for right now. I'm going to unmute the thing so I could hear you guys talk.
Okay, I'm live and ready to go. Guys, I just wanted to take a moment before I share my thoughts about the impact that Joe Brown has made on my life. I wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for coming, because we're all in this together. And as Sal told you, just be there for one another. I tell you, last year he was not here, and he says to me, I want to see the Field of Dreams. I've known the man 6-7 years. I've known Sal 6 or 7 years, and he said to me, I want to see the Field of Dreams. So I said, you know what? You want to see the field? Let's make it happen. He came down on a Friday afternoon, fell in love with it so much that he said to me, can I sing the national anthem on opening day? And I thought, you're sure you want to drive all the way down to from New York? Yes, please. Can I sing on opening day? You've got it. That's just the kind of human being he is. And I know I can speak for the rest of the team here. Everybody just loves him, and we all do. You don't find anyone more genuine than him. So Sal, thank you for joining us virtually this year. And now I will close with my thoughts on Joe Brown. I've known Joe for most of my life. The Field of Dreams started when I was 4. I grew up knowing him and looking up to him. As a kid, it was always cool to see an adult drive a chair, like I did. As I got older, he showed me that there was no limits to what I could do. I enjoyed watching his interactions on and off the field, taking his pictures. As I got older, Joe taught me and entrusted me to complete some of the tasks he did weekly at the field. One of those tasks was when he could not be there one weekend, and we had a lot of our Miss New Jerseys that sing will come and do their service hours down at the field. And I didn't know it was one of the Miss New Jerseys that he had scheduled. And he says to me, do me one favor. Make sure you get a picture with one of the pretty girls. And so I did. As I got older, when I was brought onto the county disability advisory board as an alternate, Joe told me that he was proud of me and to continue to advocate for individuals with disabilities. I learned a lot from Joe, but not nearly enough. He was a great mentor, always easy to talk to and ask questions. Thank you, Joe, for your kindness, wisdom, and drive, and willingness to help others. Sure. Please welcome Assemblyman for Atlantic County and former Mayor of Atlantic City, Don Guardian.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. So let me just comment on two items that we're trying to fund right now. It's always been good to, whatever position I've been in, to be able to help with redesigning, rebuilding. Obviously, my time in Atlantic City, I realized what all the obstacles were, and so I was lucky enough to have a crew of people, so we just made the curb cuts. I guess I was supposed to ask someone for permission or go to planning or zoning, but in those days I didn't quite understand it, but it got done. When I was mayor, we forced CRDA to double the amount of money that it cost them to repave Pacific Avenue, so they put in all the curb cuts, and then passed legislation that said every time that you redo a street in Atlantic City, you had to do curb cuts. What I didn't realize for the last 10 years, they just don't repave any streets in Atlantic City. So they have to use curb cuts, but we're not getting any. The second one is it always frustrates me when I talk with other government officials and they have no idea what they're talking about, but they tell you what your city looks like. And so it was very frustrating a year and a half ago as they're trying to fix things up to tell me about how all the lights are working in Atlantic City when they're not, and how well the boardwalk is designed for ADA ramps. And so luckily I was able to get two people from CRDA, because we had $100 million coming to redo the boardwalk. So I picked the two people that actually do the work at the boardwalk that had told me about all these ADA ramps. And I picked a good spring day where we had a nice nor'easter coming so they could be as miserable as they possibly could as I walked them on the boardwalk from the T-Jetty back down to the first casino and showed them that there's not a single ramp for anyone to actually get to the beach. Not only did they not have ADA ramps, what they did is they put an ADA ramp from the street to the boardwalk, and then there was nothing from the boardwalk to the beach. Or they built an ADA ramp from the boardwalk to the beach, but you couldn't get to the street. So they were actually logical, understood this. The changes that you'll see that are coming about are going to include that. I also told them that I thought from New York Avenue to go 2 miles before you got to a bathroom that was accessible for anyone, just a single bathroom, a single toilet for the thousands of people that are on the beach, and the only accessible was an unacceptable situation in Atlantic City, and this is what we get for allowing politicians from the city and the state to run the place. So that is going to be changed before next summer as we do some of the advances. The second part I wanted to tell you is I was very impressed with Camden. They have a program where you simply call, use your email or text, and a vehicle comes to your house, picks you up and takes you anywhere you want to go in Camden, including the 4 supermarkets in Cherry Hill, because there's no supermarkets in Camden. And they have, within 6 months, been able to do that within 5 minutes of the time you call, have ADA accessible vehicles. When you get to your location, the supermarket, the college, high school, because you want to go and see your kids play, and that's the people that are using this, or to get to the hospital, it's a $2 charge for the first person, $1 for every other person. It actually worked, not like Atlantic County. I'm not making fun of Atlantic County, but you can tell me about how great the accessibility is, but I've learned very quickly that when you call and you have to wait 3 days to get a vehicle, then when you get stuck somewhere and you have to wait 4 hours for it to come back, that's not a convenient situation. So it's deplorable. So this plan works in Camden. My chief of staff, Brett, and I went there. We actually got on the van, saw people smiling. You know, they weren't ready. They weren't paid to, you know, talk to me. They were actual people that used it. They actually had ADA ramps that got people on and off conveniently and things like that, and they did it for a very reasonable price. So, understanding how politics works, I'm a Republican. The rest of Camden, not so much. So, there are many Republicans in Camden that there are in Atlantic City, so we just got an idea of how that works. However, you never get money from the state unless you're, you know, working cooperatively. So we agreed to sponsor the program they have in Camden for another year. In return, they agreed to sponsor including it in Atlantic City. And so that's where we're moving right now. I hope to see that. Right now, they're thinking of providing all new jitneys, electric, but nonetheless all new jitneys that the state would provide the funding for, but this would be the program. So you'd call, comes to your door, takes you, get back. At first, they want to do Obsidian Island and include Egg Harbor Township, so easy access to the airport and back. I saw that slide, which I was very impressed with the airlines and things, but unfortunately, I usually take Spirit. They have... Yeah, so, you know, it is not as clean as a Greyhound if you've taken Spirit, and they have a little bit worse record than Greyhound in getting you there. So good luck with trying to get that on, but one day we'll have this done. So it's great to be here all 3 years. Thank you for giving me a few moments. Thanks all of you for volunteering your time to make sure that everyone gets to enjoy our state, gets to enjoy South Jersey, but the next step is getting to the beaches. And, you know, I get it. It's $100,000 to build a handicap ramp. It costs $100 million to rebuild a boardwalk. So it costs $6,000 to put that ramp out and stuff. Margate was able to do it for all their people. Of course, they only have that ramp, that you know, that nice blue ramp. It goes to the dunes. Then it stops. So you can't get across the dunes or you can't get to the beach. So I'm not exactly sure, other than for a good photo op, what that ramp was, but I'm sure government was involved there. But I don't think it was meant for just the rich people in Margate. It was really meant for people that had trouble walking on the beach. So it's cheap enough to do. We know that they have beach accessible wheelchairs. You've made me very clear about that and stuff. There's no reason why every lifeguard tent should not have one of those beach chairs available. So let's make our beaches, that's what we're most proud of here in South Jersey, to make sure they're accessible to everyone as we move forward again. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, everybody. Comments, questions? About anything we talked about tonight? Once again, I would like to bring Rev Dave and the committee up as we say our farewells.
Thank you again, everybody, for coming. Your chariot awaits. So we must conclude our time together, but that doesn't mean that we conclude this conversation. It doesn't mean we conclude this work. It's only just begun. And so now we send you out into the world to make a difference for all people, to make sure that this world, all of our buildings and programs and our hearts are accessible for all people. We pray that you have the best of nights and that we work together to make the world a better place. Thank you. If the committee could come up, we'll take our annual picture together, and then we'll wish everybody a good night.